副主席。
Yes, Deputy Chairman. We'll start the second session of today's meeting. I would like to welcome the deputations to our meeting. You can use the earpiece, and channel 0 is the floor channel, channel 1 Cantonese, channel 2 English, channel 3 Putonghua. If you need any assistance, please contact our staff. We'd like to remind the deputations that your written and verbal submissions will not be covered by the Electoral Powers and Privileges Ordinance. Now I would like to also draw your attention to the content of the points to note for members of the public attending electoral meetings and observing meetings in the public gallery. In fact, the guide was annexed to the letter sent to you, and a copy has also been tabled for your reference. If you need a copy, you can also contact our security staff. I will give each deputation 3 minutes, and when time's up, I will have to ask you to stop. So please be concise when you speak. If you want to give further views, you are welcome to do so in writing. The secretary cannot attend this session of the meeting because he has got other business to attend to. But then we have the Deputy Secretary, Mr. Low, with us, and we also have Mr. Tim Loy, the Chairman of the CSPE, with us. Right, so Mr. Tam Locke, spokesman of the for the concern, or the coalition for the concern of associate degrees. Chairman, in fact, we saw on some occasions a sudden surge in the number of associate degree places, and there were cases of over-enrollment of students, and those who were victimized were the students. And then we have seen that the CTU wishes to sell its self-financing arm. The Education Bureau is like a toothless tiger. It hasn't done anything in terms of oversight and regulation of the CTU self-financing institution. I think it's unreasonable for the selling of this institution. It is said that for the University of Wollongong, it will take over $900 million of reserves. So is this not transfer of interest? And in the report on higher education, it was proposed that there should be a separate authority to oversee the development of the self-financing post-secondary sector. In 2008-2010, there were review reports on higher education, and again it was recommended that another body be set up to oversee the development of the self-financing post-secondary sector. The JQRC is again a toothless tiger. The Liaison Committee on Quality Assurance, is a toothless tiger. We want the administration to immediately prepare for the setting up of an independent monitoring body. and you should try to protect the interests of the students and ensure the quality of the services provided by the self-financing post-secondary sector. And please also follow up on the selling of the city university self-financing institution to another university. Yes, Chairman, I want to say that an alliance has been reached between CityU and the University of Wollongong. And I want to make 4 points. First of all, the where the assets will go, and we are of the view that the selling of the institution is in fact a case of making use of loopholes in the law. Now, in fact, the institution was set up under Section 88 of the Inland Revenue Ordinance, and so we are concerned about where the $900 million will go to. And we've been told that the money will be used for the new school premises, a new campus, and we are concerned. And also, an interest-free loan of $600 million was obtained from the government by the institution through the Finance Committee. And as soon as the loan had been fully repaid, the institution decided to said that the institution would be sold. Now, for this newly established institution, it will operate under Cap 493, governing non-local institutions. So, will the certificates and degrees awarded be duly recognized, because these will be awarded by a non-local institution? We only have one private university under the Post-Secondary Colleges Ordinance, and that is the Shuyan University. And so we are concerned about the a new institution to be set up by the University of Wollongong. In fact, we have sought meetings of the Education Bureau on many occasions, but to no avail. So as we have the Education Bureau representative here, would like to get a reply from him. So concerning the management rights in the future, to which institution will they belong in the future? And they said that the University of Wollongong will be responsible for the management of the new institution. If the answer is yes, then it's no longer a case of an alliance having been set up. In fact, it's just our handing over the institution to an overseas university. Mr. Jackie Mack, I'm Jackie Mock from the Labour Party. Chairman, we've seen a lot of problems associated with the self-financing post-secondary sector, the selling of the CityU institution, and also the over-enrollment of students in the Lingnan institution. And in fact, I studied in the self-financing arm of the Hong Kong U, and there were some so-called scandals. For example, the quality of the translation program offered was called into question. And then concerning the surpluses, they have been used to set up the Centennial College. The surpluses have not been used to upgrade the teaching facilities, of the institution. So you can see that there is a lack of transparency, there isn't sufficient monitoring. Why is it that we have so many self-financing tertiary institutions? That was because the government did not want to use public money to provide more publicly funded tertiary places. In fact, we are suffering from a shortage of publicly funded tertiary places, and so many A-level and DSE graduates were not able to get publicly funded tertiary places, although they were able to meet the minimum requirements for entering UGC-funded universities. And as a result, many self-financing institutions sprang up. There is insufficient monitoring of these institutions, and many of these institutions are only concerned about making profits. And some students study for associate degrees because they want to get articulation places in universities. So I thank Mr. Jackie Mock from the Labour Party. Next we have Ms. Pauline Jessica Hillary. I want to say that the present ordinance is outdated. The government's role is not clearly laid down.
The government always says that the institutions should be autonomous in order for them to evade from their responsibility to monitor their operation. Now, there may be the possibility of hasty increase of tuition fees, and then there is no follow-up in the programs because of this outdated legislation. I study in Shuyan College. I would like to give some examples in my college. Shuyan College has made a written submission this time. They talked about student members being important elements of quality assurance, and then there is an active bridge of communication between the college and the students. So there is enough transparency and consultation of students in terms of school policies. Just now, our alumnus say that he has been in the college for 4 years. He hasn't felt this merit. I am in the same position because the student member system is low in transparency and recognition. The students don't have enough right to know, and they don't have enough information to take part in discussion about school policies. The college spent 300 million to build a new research building, but over the years we did not have enough information. At the end of this year, the building will be completed, and we only knew from a news report, internal news report, that there are various zones in this building. This building involves the spending of a big amount, and it is used as the excuse or reason to increase tuition fees by 10%. But then this policy was made behind closed doors, and there isn't the support of students and other stakeholders. So if the college is to do its public consultation with the reason that it should be autonomous, then this is not adequate. Besides, the upper limit is $5,000 to reserve a school place, but then Shuyan didn't charge this. On the enrollment day, Shuyan just charged a few $10,000 per semester. So if you only rely on the institutions to publicize information for public monitoring, this is definitely not enough. So the government must establish its monitoring role. Since there are these problems about self-financing institutions, the government must put in place the necessary regulation. Thank you. Next, Ms. Tan Ka-yi, Chairman. Good morning. I am an official in the Student Association of Shuyan. I want to talk about the transparency problem of the college's school affairs. Again, this is arising from the Tertiary Institution Ordinance. Now, the number of student members in the governance body is not enough, and there is not enough representativeness. Among 16 members, there are fewer than half of the members are students. And in each club or committees, there are fewer than 3 student members. Participation of students and communication or publicity is not enough. There is not the need to gather comments from student members. So student members are not representative enough. And the content of meeting are not transparent. So students don't know the progress of work. Student members or representatives should come from student association and various clubs and societies so that they can play the role as bridges for communication. Then they can relay students' views to the bodies. But now there is not the right avenue for them to do so. The college only comes into contact most with the student's office, but it is not a designated body. It does not have enough power to deal with school affairs. If we want to reflect our views, we don't know which department we should approach. If the degree of transparency is enhanced about school affairs, then there will be a platform for communication between the college and students. Quality of teaching can also be enhanced, and students' rights can also be better safeguarded. About the lack of transparency of composition of the school council members list can only be seen from the website. As to how these people are elected or how long their terms of office are, we don't know, and we can only search the information from the website. And then more than half of the members are businessmen. Businessmen don't know much about education. So I really doubt how much importance these school council members have attached to the development of Shuyan. And in the school council, there is no student representative. So many policies are made without taking into consideration students' views. If we take reference from the Hong Kong U Ordinance or Open U Ordinance, well, we know exactly the number of student representatives and the tenure. So I think Shuyan should take reference from it. Student association representatives are school council members. They can monitor the college. So this is worth taking reference. Thank you. Next, Ms. Yun Ka-wei. I am an official from Shuyan College Student Association. I want to talk about financial assistance from the government to self-financing institutions. There are subsidized projects, for example, land grants and self-financing assistance scheme, and also research fund and so on. Since 2009, after the quality enhancement grant scheme, there are altogether 3 projects given 50-odd million in Shuyan. However, many institutions said that this kind of financial information is very detailed in nature. They should not be publicized. But these institutions get public funds from the government, so taxpayers and the students have the right to know how the money is spent. Let's take Shuyan as an example. How did it spend the 50 million, and what is the effectiveness? We don't know. For these grant schemes, they reflect future development direction of the college. If we don't even know the future direction development, then well, we may fall into the situation like City U. We can't protect ourselves. The government should not only provide relevant papers and then give approval, that's all. They should not leave the institutions alone. I think both the government and the institutions should provide information for the public to monitor. There should be some indicators. In the 2014 policy address, it said that the Education Bureau would like to offer 1,000 subsidized or subvented AD places for programs with good potential and development prospect. Now the government is taking the lead to turn tertiary education into vocational education. Is it true that the literature or history, philosophy subjects are not important? Only those courses with commercial potential are important. So you are actually commoditizing the programs. This is a very bad demonstration. The government should not only allocate resources to these areas. The institutions would like to get more resources, so they are inclined to develop only these professional areas at the expense of other subjects. For those who study literature or social science subjects, it's very unfair to them. And the overall tertiary education development is getting less and less healthy. Thank you. Next, Mr. Au Wei-kang, External Vice President of Executive Committee of Hang Seng Management College Students Union. Good morning. Now, in the post-secondary education ordinance, there are issues about self-financing institutions. I want to focus on these problems. Right now, this ordinance is outdated. It was amended in the 60s, and so far it has not been amended further. Apart from registration and some technical provisions in the ordinance, as long as the institutions can meet some basic registration requirements and requirements about structure, the institutions will definitely be registered. But then the ordinance must keep pace of time. In the first session, some deputations said that they are of the view that different institutions have different circumstances, so we cannot overgeneralize things by the use of one legislation. However, we think that to a certain extent, various self-financing institutions can be subject to some general legislations as to what their responsibilities are. First of all, we think that they should spell out clearly that in different institutions, what should be the roles of students and staff members in the school councils and how they should be represented. Now, if we take the Open U ordinance as an example, there should be periodic disclosure of financial statements so that students and members of the public will know about the financial position of the institution. Regarding the Open U, it is a self-financing institution. However, it is subject to an independent legislation. So I don't think that for other institutions, they should not have their own legislations independently. The government should either amend the post-secondary education ordinance, or alternatively, each institution should be subject to its own ordinance. Thank you. Thank you. Next, Mr. Yip Yi-yin, President of Executive Committee of the Open University of Hong Kong Students Union. Good morning. The OU is established by the government. It has independent financial operation, and there is an Open U ordinance to govern its operation and procedures. According to the OU ordinance, the the president of Executive Committee of Students' Union is an ex officio member of the school council, and there are student representatives in various committees so that the university can listen to students' voice, and students can also have some understanding of the development of the U. Under the OU ordinance, during the meetings, there are student representatives. Besides, it is required that the university every year must give an account to the school supervisors, the university report. And every year, there is the publication of the annual report and financial reports so that people will know about its financial condition. In the first session of this meeting, many institutions are of the view that it is not appropriate to disclose to require the universities or institutions to disclose financial position. Why are they so unwilling to do so? And why can't there be some legislations to govern them in doing so? The OU ordinance has exercises strict regulation of the university. This is a successful example. Why is it that other institutions are only subject to the post-secondary education ordinance? Why can't you take reference from the successful example of OU that there is an independent ordinance governing it? I think some more studies can be done in this area. Besides, we hope the government can give more support and assistance to self-financing institutions. Self-financing institutions and UGC-funded colleges differ a lot in terms of resources that they get. Students of self-financing institutions can't get resources available to UGC-funded universities. Those universities can share resources, but self-financing institutions can't use those resources. So those resources are only limited to students in UGC-funded universities. In 2014, the government introduced a subsidy scheme for 1,000 students to take 80 programs in designated professional areas to meet social needs. However, this is only a separate subsidy scheme. We hope that the government can offer financial assistance to each student in self-financing institutions. We hope the government can make sure that there is appropriate allocation of resources so that the policy is not skewed to UGC-funded universities at the expense of self-financing institutions. Thank you. Next, Mr. Fong Ka-ho, ex officio member of the Hong Kong Shu-Yan University Student Union Council. I want to share my views today. There is ordinance for the 8 UGC-funded universities. However, for the self-financing institutions, there is only the post-secondary education ordinance, which is very lenient and general. And so far, the government has not the intention to amend the law to exercise more financial control. Just now, a number of representatives from Shu-Yan said that about tuition fee increase, school council members' appointment, school affairs, and so on, the students are not in the know. Some student representatives are being elected. It sounds good, but then the degree of representativeness is almost zero. The students don't have the channel to get access to a lot of information. Lingnan U and City University raised a basket of problems, and these problems recur from time to time. The government has presented this paper. Apart from the liaison committee, which is something new, and there are things that look pleasant. Apart from these, I don't see any specific means to change or to enhance quality assurance. About the quality assurance scheme, students' opinions can't be heard. So I think all these are empty talks. 14B of the paper says that the institutions can choose whether or not to adopt the code. If they choose not to do so, then is it true that the government can't do anything? So you are allowing the institutions to place a knife on the students? I think the government has shirked the necessary responsibility. Thank you. Next, Mr. Lee Hon Leung from Zhuhai Student Union. Thank you. I think self-financing institutions are important elements of post-secondary education in Hong Kong, but there is not enough monitoring. For example, tuition fee adjustment and also composition of school council. Students can't take part in school policies and affairs, and their interests are being neglected. Let's first talk about tuition fee adjustment. Tuition fees are on the rise, and the rate of adjustment is very big, much bigger than inflation rate. In our college in 2014, newly admitted students have to pay 62,500. For 2013 students, the tuition fee is 59,000. In 1 year, the increase is 6%. In 2013, Hong Kong's inflation rate is only 4.3%. Tuition fee increase exceeded inflation rates. So students really cast doubt on the reason why tuition fee has to rise so much, but then no reason is given to students to explain. Then students will have misunderstanding about the fee increase. Self-financing institutions present annual financial reports to the government, but then the reports are not publicized. In the first session, a deputation said it is not recommendable to publicize financial reports. Then how can students have confidence in the colleges? How can you assure the quality of these self-financing institutions? Besides, for School Affairs Office, it is not playing an adequate role. In Section 2A of the ordinance, it is stated that the council is the administrative body managing the assets and general affairs of the institution. So I think that committee should have more internal members and fewer external members. And we have some recommendations to make.
Can the colleges be asked by the government, requested by the government, to provide reports and disclosure? And after all, the self-funded colleges are to serve the students. We want the government to set up a formula for the raising of school fees so that there is some control over tuitions. And a last point, the government should request that there is a composition to the board whereby the outside members are more than the number of inside members of the board. Yes. Mr. Lee Taxing, President of the Tonghua College Students' Union. There are 2 points I would like to make. The government funding and support for self-funded colleges are completely insufficient. For the subsidies to students, there is but the tuition sponsorship, which is means test and non-means tested. And only 30,000 plus can be borrowed as student loan from the for the students. This is, of course, sufficient to cover the 8 university students, which is about 40,000 or so tuition per year. But that is not the case for the self-funded colleges. The tuition is much higher, and the student loan, at the end of the day, after much strife, was only increased by $100,000. There are programs such as nursing, etc., which are 5 years long, and it is already $460,000 in total tuition. That is not including some of the ancillary expenses. Given this high or heavy burden, how are students able to sustain? Is the government sponsorship sufficient? No. And further, there is a joint committee for student sponsorship, supposedly to be responsive to students' needs. However, all the representatives are from the 8 universities, faculty and students, none from the self-funded colleges. But in fact, the latter are exactly those which need that sponsorship and that financial assistance. There are no students from the self-funded colleges. Does it mean that the government had neglected the voice of the self-funded colleges? I would urge that the government review this as soon as possible. And further, on the governance of self-funded colleges, well, definitely for tuition raises, there is no control whatsoever. It can be raised every year, and basically the internal governance body will be able to make that decision without checks. And for many of the students, upon graduation, they are already carrying a loan of $500,000. And many of the students, because of lack of transparency on the part of the colleges, do not have the right to information. And a lot of people, including the community and the students, are losing confidence in these colleges because of intransparency. And also, we do not know that whether the schools are benefiting from the rentals, benefits, etc. So we do want to see more transparency on the part of the schools. Last point to make, we are Hong Kong students. We want to see better development of tertiary education, but that will have to be based on listening to us. I hope that the government will heed our voices. Chan Hu-yang. Well, for your reference, in the 2014 to 2015 year, there was 4 to 9% of tuition raise for the self-funded self-funded colleges, and the tuition can be as high as $90,000 for the associate degree, and if it is higher diploma, it can be well over $100,000, totaling some $400,000 in terms of loans and financial burden for the student upon graduation. I would want to see that there is serious review of the colleges so that there is a repatriation to the benefit of the students in terms of finances, in the form of sponsorship, scholarships, etc. And the government is reluctant to provide more funding for government-funded spaces or positions in the universities. And in 2010, 2011, there was an increase of 43% at Shiyan College, and of that, only $29,000 of the tuition was actually used for the benefit of the students. So is it an education shop that they are running? In 1960, the ordinance, since it was promulgated, had not been amended in major ways. It is now outdated. There should be participation of students in the governance body or the board of the universities or colleges, and at present, the so-called autonomy enjoyed by the colleges is but that enjoyed by the supervisor and the headmaster, the president of the college. And there should be transparency of the finances, the tuition paid by the students, where are they used? There should at least be disclosure of the usage of the tuition. And for the financial year, if the government can be the supervisor, the government can, based on the finances of the colleges, decide whether it is rightful or legitimate for them to raise tuition. We think that there should be better governance of the schools, setting a ceiling and limiting the raises to tuition, and also there have to be democratization of the decision-making at the universities and the colleges so that there is more participation by the students and to disclose the finances of the colleges, and the government should not use any pretext to limit the governance of the or supervision of the colleges. Thank you very much. Mr. Lyman Locke. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Very often we say that Hong Kong people say that there should be more assistance to the young people in terms of education so that there is sufficient resources and a fair playing field. But having said that, how many of the electoral members are really concerned about the education affairs of Hong Kong? Looking around the room, we have only 5 members, and most of them are from the Democratic Party or Pan-Democratics, and Mr. Ng had to leave. He's not even here. And for tuitions and such, for tuitions, do you know the plight of the students? And it is not a recent phenomena. It's been happening for a number of years. Example as follows. I am in the Hong Kong Professional College. I am a student there, and my program is social work. In February 5, 2013, in Ming Pao, there was a whole page dedicated to students in our college, the so-called professional diploma. It is in the qualification level 3. That is to say, there is no upward mobility possibility, and that is, there is no outlet after the graduation from the Hong Kong City Institute of Higher Education at this program. And in fact, it was said that they will lead on to high dip or university spaces. But there were 50 students who were in public administration and 53 students in applied psychology studies. But at the end of the day, only 10 of these students were able to progress on to level 4 on the qualification rungs. So, and then the school said, well, you either repeat the program or go to another college for similar programs. But if that is already the case, and at accessing the programs, the teachers had said that this would lead on to, the program would lead on to high dip or university, then I think the EDB should be liable. The EDB should have a responsibility there. We're talking about upward mobility and a fair education system. In fact, you can see that the drawbacks of the system exactly leads to the non-upward mobility of the students. If you spend so much time on exchange groups with overseas countries, maybe you should spend some efforts here. Yip Yi-yin, President of the Executive Committee of Tertiary Education Students. Well, we see that the 8 universities, the associate graduate programs, and the self-funded colleges are under dire situation, partly because of the non-connect, as mentioned just now, and also the tuition. And it will be at least 60,000 to 70,000 as a start for the basic programs, and we're not even talking about higher diploma. And so at graduation, it is well over 400,000 or 500,000 or even higher for student loans. Now, for the graduates from these programs, are the students able to find employment which will allow them to repay these student loans to the government? And $60,000, $70,000 a year, divide that by 10 months or 12 months a year, actually, it is actually a grave responsibility in the sense that these students will have to be working, and at the same time they do not know whether the 60,000 or 70,000 was put into the places that really mattered. The universities and the colleges are to train up and to nurture talents for the society, but at the same time, they are privately set up companies, that is, they're private companies, while they are education institutions. As private companies, of course, they're entitled to make profits. And in our organization, we have had meetings with the presidents and the vice presidents, and we asked them why there had to be raises in the tuition. And they said, inflation. I do not know why knowledge has to be pegged to inflation. Of course, there are expenses of paper, utilities, etc. But every time the tuition raises some few $1,000s, and that is too much. There must not be an annual raising of their tuition. If this goes on for long, then the students will have to think and consider whether they can indeed repay the student loan or whether the families can sustain that kind of financial burden. And they may actually not go for university or college education. And this sounds like the 1960s when my mother was young and she had to consider whether she should work instead of study. And that is definitely a regression. I think there should be tuition ceiling set by the government and actually freeze the tuition and finally move towards lowering of tuition. Thank you very much, Minister Ip, for your views. Chu Wai-sung, the concern group for tertiary education. The DAB, Mr. To, had said that many of the colleges, self-funded colleges, have become education shops, focused only on profit making. And then Ms. Chung said that, well, tuition is called for because these education institutions will have to carry on, otherwise they will close, they will shut down. Now, it seems that there is a divergence of opinions there. Now, the establishment party should actually sit down and listen to the voices of the students. We would want to respond that the government paper to the LegCo, there are three main points there. One, transparency to be raised, and secondly, quality assurance, and third, raise the level of governance and protect the rights of the students. These are very fine words, but what is the main point? The main point for these four themes, in terms of transparency, for instance, the government is saying that there is a website with quota for students and also intake information and program information and the content of the program and also the deposits for enrollment and also the refunding arrangements, etc. All these are for transparency raising on the part of the government. Well, I actually do not need the government to provide all that. The university or colleges website provide all that, and we would know all that information upon enrollment. So it is a laissez-faire practice now. Now, our concern is the government shirking responsibility, saying that this is the autonomy of the colleges, this is about the freedom of the academia, and we therefore cannot be overly intervening. But in fact, there should be improvements, there should be reviews. Since the 1960s, it's been only the 4 pages and the 13 stipulations, and the content, is it still relevant in today's Hong Kong? We also saw, actually, there were students who spoke up just now for higher diploma and also the associate degree. 4 years of that will end up in 400,000 plus of student loan. Today doesn't mean that the students will have to ask the government for funding and sponsorship and then try to repay the loan until the student grows to be, over 30 years old, and then the person will have to get married, find his own dwelling. Can he afford that? I think there should be more attention here. Yim Chi Hung, member of the HKCT action. Now, I would like to talk about my own example, HKCT. I entered in 2013-2014 academic year. The fee was 48,000. That was for the first year, but the second year, the tuition had been revised to 45,000 plus. That is 3% upward revision, over $1,300, and the school never told us as to what this extra tuition was to be allocated. Well, this is much like McDonald's, creeping up the price every now and then. Now, I have to say, this 3% tuition raise, the college have to be transparent as to 3% raise. Did you say 3% raise? Yes, yes. Among the self-funded colleges, it is low, but this is 3% year-on-year increase. What is this used for, this 3%? Is it, as the student who spoke up just now said, that there will have to be reams of paper used, and therefore there will have to be this 3% increase? I call for transparency, the disclosure of the financials of the college. Now, if there is a new campus to be built and tuitions have therefore to be raised, now every year there is advertising from the college. Every year there's widespread advertising efforts of the Hong Kong CT, but the intake was only over 200 per year. Huge amounts of advertising with no effects, and this is definitely a mismatch. The students do not have any right to know and any participation, but on the other hand, they foot the bill, the students. So there should not be a voluntary disclosure of the financials. This should be made mandatory to the colleges, because the colleges are now ed shops, and we, as the honored customers, should have the right to know.
Next, we have Ms. Hui Wun. Ms. Hui, please. Thank you. Chairman, you've pronounced my name correctly. No, the student representatives here were elected by one man, one vote. Mostly, the CE is not. But then I'm from the College of Continuing Education, CU, or Professional Education, CUHK. But I want to say that in fact, for the those who want to become SU members, the counselor can arrange for a group to get to be grouped together as a cabinet. And in fact, SU students, or rather SU members, in fact, can be so-called selected. They attend interviews like job interviews. I think we all want to see more democratic governance. Now we can express our views on whether teachers are teaching well, whether computers are operating well, but then concerning policy making, we have no say at all. But then I think institutions should allow students some say in policy making. For example, in the council, there should be one seat for students, a student representative. I have borrowed $40,000 from the government. The $40,000 is for the payment of tuition fees. By the time I graduate, I will be heavily indebted. The amount should be around $100,000. But then if I'm fortunate enough to be able to get an articulation place in university, I will have to borrow $100,000 more. And I don't really know whether I will be able to repay the debt, because I intend to be a journalist, and journalists are not well paid. And so I really don't know whether I will be able to repay the debt. In the first session, Mr. Toh from the DAB said that Hong Kong was a commercial city, and so there is nothing wrong with institutions, operating classes to make a profit. All right, so students are regarded as customers. So as customers, we want to know where the fees we've paid have gone to. And so I think my requests are more humble and modest. I want to see SU members directly elected. I want to see the CE being directly elected, and I want to see democratization of the administration of the institution. I want to have more say or some say in policy making. Next, we have Mr. Chan Man-wai, founder of the 18 Districts Poor Associate Degree Student Union of Hong Kong. I want to say that, Chairman, in fact, I am really very poor, and so I have to mend my own old clothes. And then I want to, concerning the 3% increase mentioned by Mr. Yim, I want to say that for Shu Yan, the increase was 9%. And then Ms. Hoi, sorry. Anyway, now education is provided to enhance the opportunities for upward social mobility on the part of young people. The provision of tertiary places is not something for the government to boast about. And I want to say that the government has made mistakes in its youth policies, and as a result, many young people are victimized. They are those studying in self-financing tertiary institutions. And then Ms. Hoi said that she did not know whether she could repay the $200,000 of debt. I believe you will be able to do so over a very, very long period of time. And also, we don't have retirement protection when we become old, and the chairman of the Youth Commission said that we young people should not apply for public housing units. But then, does he really understand our difficulties? I think it's just crazy to interpret or understand education policies from the perspective of commercial principles. For the 8 UGC-funded institutions, they have also increased their self-financing places. I think you need to try to monitor the tuition fees charged by self-financing institutions. Some charge $120,000 a year. Ms. Hoi, you're already very lucky, do you know? And I suggest that the government should impose profit control for self-financing tertiary institutions. In fact, I have studied the panel's discussion paper. The Education Bureau keeps emphasizing that self-financing institutions enjoy a high degree of autonomy and academic freedom. And I want to say that, in fact, this is really not the truth. Next, we have Mr. Oscar Low, and founder of the Alliance for Poor People in respect of education. Mr. Low, please make sure that your light will not be on the clock. Mr. Lam, at the CE's question time, you said CY Leung was not telling the truth, and so did Joseph Lee. CY Leung in his policy address said that a 5-year-old child was concerned that he could not buy a flat. Now, in fact, do you know that young people cannot even afford to pay their tuition fees? They are indebted. They owe the government for over $100,000. My parents are not rich. I know that some young people come from rich families. Someone's father is an industrialist, and her father has donated money to name a theater in a tertiary institution, and I don't and in Hong Kong, we don't have fake universities. I attach great importance to filial piety. I will not blame my parents. I will only blame the government. Do you know that those studying in self-financing tertiary institutions are subject to a lot of pressure? Such pressure is suffocating. Such pressure may make young people die. Do you know? I don't think you know. Please read the news. You know, many young people can't afford the tuition fees. They feel a lot of pressure. Some of them committed suicide. They jumped to their death. They used various ways to commit suicide. So have you read the news? I'm being very serious. This is really saddening. Government says that Hong Kong is a knowledge-based economy, so you want the employment rate to be lowered. So is it that when you think about education, you only have in mind the employment rate and job opportunities? Education is not just about finding jobs upon graduation. Education is about the imparting of knowledge and the acquisition of knowledge. You know, I don't know how to speak very decently and politely. Do you know why? I was able to attain the minimum requirements for entering UGC funded universities, but then I was denied a place, and I had to go to a self-financing tertiary institution. The institution regards me as a customer, not as a student. You understand? It only knows how to use the money it has to carry out internal decoration works. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. Lo Tek Chang, Vice President, External Social Science Society of CIHE. Now, there is an API which says that we should pursue lifelong learning. So, but where should the money come from, or where can the money come from? So we have to apply for loans from the government, but we have to repay the loans. So knowledge is pegged to money. Ultimately, we have to find a job so that we can have the money to repay the loans. Self-financing institutions increased their fees by over 9% because of inflation. Look at our program. From diploma to degree, the total amount required is $430,000, and I will be very heavily indebted. How can I repay the loans? So I think there should be more publicly funded tertiary places. Chairman, thank you. Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Fong Ka Lok. Thank you. I am a public and social service higher diploma student, and I'm studying in HKCT. In fact, I have wanted to serve my fellow students, but I haven't been able to do much. Some students decided to terminate their studies after a few months. Some did not formally withdraw their or did not formally withdraw, but then they did not attend lessons. I asked them why, and they said that the quality of the programs fell short of their expectations. And some students said that in fact the content of the program was similar to the content of primary and secondary subject programs. So I believe you can understand why these students feel so frustrated. I think there should be a monitoring body for self-financing tertiary programs. The body should look at the quality of the programs, the level of the programs. I think it's important that these programs must meet the needs of the tertiary students. Thank you. Next, Mr. Joshua Fong from the Democratic Party. I beg your pardon. Next, we have Mr. Chang Sao Yin, President of the Student Union of CUHK. Sorry. Thank you, Chairman. So you have seen me, Chairman, but where's the Secretary? And only a few members are present. We're here because we want the Secretary to listen to our views. Now we have so many self-financing tertiary institutions here. Zhuhai, HKCT. So a 5-year-old child asked me where he could go to if he could not enter university, and I told him he should study abroad. He should not study in Hong Kong. Do you know why I said this? CY Leung's children are all studying abroad. This is because he knows very well that the education system in Hong Kong is full of problems. Now let me talk about CU. Now for the CU's professional school, he talked in cocktail language. I could not understand what he was trying to say. He seemed to be towing the official line. And you can see, please look at this brochure. It's an advertising document. There is no information about financial arrangements. You can only see what activities there are, who the examiners are, and so you know nothing about the school. After having read 20 pages, there's no disclosure of financial information. And then one student said that the student union was not elected, so in fact it's worse than a functional constituency. In fact, they've approached me for assistance. And then concerning their advisory committee, Mr. Ma Fong Kwok is one of the members. And then I am a member of the Senate. I can't get financial information. And then there are a few hundred courses. I don't know whether there is sufficient enrollment. I think under the Trade Description Ordinance, it should be called the CU Education Shop for Professional Studies. Yes, can we have a quorum count? It seems that there aren't too many members present. In fact, when we started the meeting, we had a quorum. Anyway, we now have Mr. Joshua Fong from the Democratic Party. Chairman, self-financing tertiary institutions have been selling their assets. They have provided substandard learning facilities, and some of them have over-enrolled students. Now, some UGC-funded institutions also have self-financing arms. They have the UGC institutions as their support, and they can get interest-free loans. They can make use of the name of the UGC-funded institutions. But then the self-financing arms do not have to follow the UGC criteria. So I think this is a loophole indeed. There is a consultancy study on quality assurance and governance of self-financing tertiary institutions. And concern has been expressed concerning the non-disclosure of financial information, and then some are of the view that the code of good practices should only include principles and not detailed arrangements. And I am worried that even if there is a code, we may not be able to see an enhancement in quality and governance if self-financing institutions do not strictly comply with the code. Government should not adopt a laissez-faire approach. Government should rigorously monitor the performance of the self-financing post-secondary sector. Self-financing institutions should not operate like businesses. There are students who are unable to go to UGC-funded institutions. They should not suffer because of lack of monitoring.
The government should not use autonomy as an excuse not to monitor student enrollment and all other policies. So when students apply for these programs, actually they don't know enough about the institutions while investing a lot of time and resources. The post-secondary education ordinance should be amended as soon as possible so that institutions are required to disclose their annual financial statements. And based on these statements, their financial position should be assessed and ranked. Now, members of the school councils must include representatives of teachers, students, and other stakeholders. And there must be the right to know by all these representatives to make sure that parents, students, and staff members' interests are protected. So this is to guard against black box operation of the institutions. I would like to respond to Chiu Wai-chung. Only members have the right to ask for accounting of number of members present. Deputations or government officials do not have the right to do so. Okay, 23 deputations for the second session have all spoken. Now I would like to invite Mr. Low from the government to respond to deputations and individuals' views. The secretary is not here. In fact, he has lost the opportunity to listen to all these views of students and deputations. Just now, a number of deputations commented on the tuition fee increase, the City University incident, and also the disclosure of financial information. So, Mr. Low, please respond. Let me apologize on behalf of the Secretary that he is not able to attend this session. Now, today, from the two sessions, we can see clearly that there are two different voices. And we are happy that today, in relation to quality assurance and governance of self-financing institutions, we are conducting this consultation. We would like to listen to different voices, including views from self-financing institutions and the students in these institutions concerning good governance and also the formulation of code of practice. The consultation work is very useful. Today, we have Mr. Lui Shim Leung here from the Self-Financing Institution Committee. So he has heard all the comments very clearly. Definitely, he will take reference from all your views. On individual institutions, well, we have heard some comments just now. Today, we're talking about quality assurance and governance of self-financing institutions. And this is also a public hearing on this topic. I may not be able to give detailed response on individual institutions. Let me comment on the overall policy and also points raised by students. Let me give some specific response. In relation to our policy, we support the parallel development of both the subvented and self-financing education segments. Education is something that we have attached importance to, and education accounts for 25% of our recurrent expenditure. So concerning provision of post-secondary education, can it be expanded on an unlimited basis? So that's why our policy is a parallel development of subvented as well as self-financing education. Some students asked about the high degree of autonomy and academic freedom and whether these will be used as excuses for these self-financing institutes not to be subject to regulation. Now, they are self-financing. They do not receive recurrent subvention from the government, so the government will adhere to the principle of reasonableness and proportionality in our regulation. The focus is to enhance transparency, ensure good governance, quality assurance, and also the right to know. About degree of transparency, on the websites there is information, and some students said that they can get the information from individual institutes' websites. Yes, through the online platform, various institutes will provide information, but the government also has the responsibility to provide an overall platform for students or prospective students to get information. And we attach importance to the accuracy of information. For example, tuition fees, number of places available, and number of students admitted by institutes. All these details are provided on the government website. And there are 2 points I would like to make. First of all self-financing institutes can only offer programs when the programs have gone through or have got the approval from the Professional and Academic Accreditation Authority. They are a very experienced organization in assessing the programs. And we're not talking about one-off assessment. There are review assessments. So when an institute has offered a program, it is not true that it won't be subject to further monitoring by the authority. Besides, we do have regular review mechanism. In enhancing good governance, I think you are most concerned about the governance, the direction of development of these self-financing institutes. Now, we are drafting the code of practice in this direction. Students have different views. Representatives of the institutes also hold different views. For example, about disclosure of financial condition, composition of school council, and monitoring of tuition fees. Today, we have heard different voices. And in the future, we will have overall consideration of all these points. We hope that you'll understand that in relation to financial disclosure, from the last session of this hearing, we understand the concerns of the school sponsoring bodies as well as the institutes. On the other hand, students ask for high degree of transparency. These self-financing institutes have tuition fees as the major source of revenue. And how is the tuition fee spent? I think this is something that the students are most concerned about, and students have the right to understand more. Thank you. I think you do. You are really qualified to be promoted. Any supplement? Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I want to thank students for giving their views in this session. About the council's or the committee's work, points made just now are all things that we are concerned about. One of our work objectives is to enhance transparency and quality of the self-financing post-secondary education sector. This time, we have made this report. There are a few bases. We think that good governance can, to a certain extent, handle a number of issues raised. As regards what should be the right model, different institutes have their autonomy. Now we are conducting this consultation, and in the future, when the code of practice is issued, then various institutes can have some points of reference. In some areas, they may have already done a good job, but there may be some blind spots that they should improve on. In the report, we've said that good governance and quality assurance internationally consist of a number of big elements. Participation and accountability. Just now students have raised this point. And tolerance or inclusion. This is also very important. Who are the members of committees or councils? Some said that it is not good to have too many outsiders, but this is not necessarily so. Outsiders or external members reflect the society. In relation to the strategy and financing of the institutes, these external members can give very good views. It's a matter of balance. After they are appointed, how can you assess their performance and improve their performance? This is a big issue. And transparency is the most controversial point. And financial disclosure was also raised just now. And people have different views. This is just very natural because people have different angles. As member of or as chairman of the committee, I would like to lead the committee to go for maximum disclosure. And different institutes may see differences in the details disclosed, but we would like to bring up some best cases for their consideration. Even if they can't do it immediately, at least in the medium term, we hope that they can gradually approach those good practice. Now, we will relay your comments to the committee after gathering all the views, when we compile the comments, we hope to be able to generate a very practicable and balanced arrangement. At the end of the day, we would like to enhance the governance and quality of the whole sector. Thank you. The best thing about public hearing is to enable the government to listen to different stakeholders and deputations, and then various organizations, deputations, and individuals can also listen directly to the government so that there will be interaction. We hope to build a consensus to improve education. Now it's time for a Q&A. If you would like to ask questions, please raise your hands. But I would like to remind you that according to Section 83A of the Rules of Procedures, if members have direct or indirect pecuniary interest on this item, you have to declare the nature of interest before you speak. Those who have indicated their preference to speak include Wong Pik-wan, Deputy Chairman Yip Kim Yoon, Sid Ho, and Mok Nai Kwong. We should adjourn this session at 12:45. Now, I will exercise my power to extend it to 1 p.m. since so many of you are here. Okay, first round. Each of you will have 4 minutes, including both question and answer. Let me say again, if you want the government officials and deputations to respond, please leave some more time for them to answer, instead of only leaving 10 odd seconds. First, Ms. Wong Pik-wan. Chairman, I find it regrettable that the Secretary is only here for the first session but not this one. Now, we should have improved our arrangement. In the first session, the deputations are all heads of institutes. No. Our Secretariat knows very clearly that it is in accordance with the order of registration. And there are so many students here in the second session, and the Secretary cannot listen directly to the students. It seems that we are giving an excuse to the Secretary to be excused. Well, I teach in the Polytechnic U, but so far I haven't taught students in self-financing programs. My feeling is that students in self-financing institutes or programs are like orphans that have been forgotten. I think the government owes a lot to these students. Now we are talking about CAP 320, the post-secondary education ordinance. This ordinance is very outdated, as students said. The government has not been doing a good job of monitoring, and this ordinance is outdated. It is not adequate. Many graduates owe others almost 500,000. What can they do? They are in a very miserable position. Besides, about tuition fee increase, is it in line with inflation or not? They don't know. The programs differ a lot in quality. Not all programs are poor, but many of them can't live up to students' expectations. About financing, it's like a black box. Many institutes are not willing to publicize financial data. They are saying that they have their own market strategy. If it is disclosed, then it will be bad to them. Now, this is a bad excuse. Students and parents and members of the public would like to know how the money and the financial resources are being used. So there are so many problems here. I have two questions. Number one, can the government tell me when the ordinance will be amended comprehensively to accommodate issues raised by students? For example, what will be the regulation structure like, and will there be representatives of students and staff members or teachers? Secondly, can the government respond to the students' point? Students owe others a lot of money. Now, if you can be admitted to the UGC-funded universities, you pay 80,000 a year, and for for a university place, the government spends like $400,000 odd. Now, for the subvented school place, perhaps you can increase the number of year one subvented places, or you can charge a flat rate. You can offer a voucher for 1 year. So we can discuss how much money we are talking about, but at least students' pressure can be alleviated. Government, thank you, Chairman and Ms. Wong, for your comments. I want to repeat the point. Now, our policy is to have complementary development of the subvented and self-financing sectors. So we do not have the policy of using public funds to pay for all self-financing school places. As regards economic support, the Students' Financial Assistance Office, no matter whether we're talking about subvented and self-financing school places, give support or assistance to students in the same way. Deputy Chairman, thank you. Students, thank you for coming. This morning, a letter was presented to all members. I have read the letter. The letter is rich in content. I want to ask you, can this letter be sent to our secretariat to be forwarded to all members? And then it can also be uploaded to our website. Is that okay? You have made a lot of very interesting and informative points. Many of you are very humorous. In the future, when you are to repay the grant loans, perhaps you can consider participating in the election of district council and LegCo. Now, in Taiwan, many young people are of the view that they should take active role in district governance after the sunflower campaign. Deputy Chairman, can you go back to today's agenda item? All right. Students have made very clear points. One point is about tuition fees. In the first session, one professor asked, why is it that the cost is mainly absorbed by the students? Should there be some way of sharing between the students and the government after they finish their study? Of course, it's beneficial to the students themselves, and it's beneficial to the society as well. The cost will generate benefits for both sides, so it should be shared. Now the government is saying that the treasury is flooded with money. They don't know how to spend the money. So I suggest that this year, part of the surplus should be spent to help the students in self-financing institutes. I propose a $30,000 assistance directly to be given to students. I don't know whether students will find this feasible. If it is agreeable, then I hope the Deputy Secretary can relay this suggestion to the Financial Secretary. This year, please don't spend the money in an arbitrary way. So yes, it's like a school voucher, $30,000 per student. This is not a long-term measure, but since this year the government is flooded with money, then this can be done first. Of course, there can be some longer-term measures.
And this month, the budget will be published. And I think that this will immediately be able to solve the problem. And also, the students have made requests according to the ordinance that it is too, it falls short of what it needs to be, and it's outdated. And students talked about the right to information, representatives on the governance board, etc. If we have time later on, perhaps the administration can respond to that. That is on the ordinance, whether there will be further amendments. I'm afraid I'm not a very good model about being succinct here. I'm sure the administration and others will respond. But I think in this room, the messages made are very, very clear indeed. Ms. Sito. Well, thank you, students, for coming up. For something so major, it takes time for doing any change. For you coming up here today, students, you are not making changes for the better for yourselves, but for those who come after you. And I agree to the point that there should be an immediate benefit made, sponsorship made to self-financed institutions and also those in associate degrees. I think this is a must. This is something that the government should provide. Now, after the umbrella movement, there was promise from the government that they will listen to the young people of Hong Kong. But I see that Mr. Ng is not even here. He's not listening to the young people of Hong Kong. Well, I hope that he will watch the video of the proceedings of this meeting. Perhaps he was just afraid of being booed in this meeting, and therefore he's left. Now, the students here today have pointed out the unfairness of it all, and that is to say the students were not able to reach the prerequisite levels and standards at primary and secondary school levels, and therefore some of the institutions at tertiary level had to provide basic education, that is to say primary and secondary school level education. Now, I have heard from some of the teachers at the colleges and institutions saying that they have to provide primary and secondary school English education to the students. But that shouldn't be. It is the system failing us. It is the negativity of the system that we are feeling now. All right? And now we're talking about tuition and the student loan. As a reporter, news reporter, it is $8,000 per month salary? How long will it take for you to repay the loan? And then, of course, you have to rent your abode as well. Well, and it will take you, what, 30 years, 40 years to own your own property. And after that, it will be you will not be eligible for any benefits because you've owned your own property. And at some time, your property may be foreclosed as well. That is the fate. Terrible. Now, there's another issue, and that is the inability of the associate degree and some other degrees in connecting to the university or to higher diploma. These are dead-end alleys, having walked down it for 2 years. This is misleading. Any response, Mr. Low? Mr. Chair, actually, according to the accreditation and the qualification, level 3 connecting up to level 4, there is actually a connecting mechanism. It can be done. And all academic qualifications will have to be registered at the registrar of the qualification, the scale, so that the students will know after finishing a particular program what particular level the student had attained. Now, in terms of connectivity, the different institutions may have their own arrangements, but the qualification system is really to provide a ladder so that the students will know where they stand. No, Mr. Chair, I'm saying there should be a disclosure of where some of them do not lead to the second level, so that this is for the students to know. Mr. Low, according to my knowledge, the institutions disclose that themselves, but you're the government, you're the supervisor. Mr. Mok, well, I will not say a lot. We have heard much about tuition, and I've heard also that the primary and secondary level teaching will have to be provided, and somebody supplemented that that's for English. But my question to you is, do you see any issues at the institutions, self-funded institutions. Let's say in teaching and learning, is there teaching that is a waste of time? That is shoddy. Tam Locke, ACT, Hong Kong. To respond to that question, in 2012, when Lingnan University they came up with advanced degree, which is different from a high dip or higher diploma, and for the self-funded institutions, this advanced diploma for associate and higher dip, it connects up to them, but not to the university undergrad. It only connects to higher dip or associate degree. So in terms of supervision of the quality of teaching and learning, it is highly inconsistent and falls short in terms of quality. There is a self-assessment mechanism for the universities, but is this sufficient? And also for the Ivy vocational training colleges. The assessment mechanism is a VTC plus the accreditation or qualification body. And there is let's say a Wollongong community college set up. Its top-up degrees and associate degrees offered may have been set up because of 493 offers. And what will happen to these degrees? Yes, I'm chairing the meeting. Chairman Wei? Yes, let me share my situation. I was enrolled in social policy and administration at a Hong Kong U sub-program. And the teacher was teaching Marxism. And the complaint was that it was too hard and too complicated. No one would take his courses. And in the end, the teacher was even fired. Now, for the students, why are they saying that? Because they have to choose subjects and programs which are easiest for them to graduate with. And this is because there is no connectivity up the chain, and also because of the expensive tuition. This is all wrong in terms of logic. If you look at the U.S. colleges, they are of university standard, and the graduates enjoy almost the same level of recognition as university graduates. Yes, there should be a review. Hui Wen-Wen? Yes, exactly. I do not know for how long I have to repay the loans. We know that. As for students talking about the standards, the 2014 DSE total number of candidates, it was 78,000 students. But in fact, there were only over 10,000 who could enroll into the universities. That is, over 60,000 could not. And many or the majority of them go to self-funded institutions. I had an A for my English, and I stand to benefit. And for the classmates who do not have that, and their language is much lower in terms of attainment, well, strangely, we could both be sitting in the same classroom taking the same classes, while those students do not know what the teacher is talking about in English. Can you please speak up, Mr. Yip? Well, actually, the administration had mentioned that the two are complementary, that is the universities and the self-funded institutions. That is not true. The two are quite segregated. The universities are quite fragmented from the self-funded institutions, and the government has no plans to allocate resources to the students at the self-funded institutions. Well, definitely the universities, public-funded universities, get a lot more resources compared to our colleges. Can you please explain? Well, I also did not understand that, Mr. Brian Low. What did you mean by being complementary, the two types of schools? Well, for tertiary education, there are those public-funded places as well as the self-funded places. These two offer a total number of places to meet the demand of young people of Hong Kong who want to pursue tertiary education. That's how they are complementary. I want to clarify that point. Now, students have talked about the accreditation of qualifications and academic attainments. And coming back to Sid Ho's point, the qualifications and the graduate positions are all recognized, but the question remains concerning at the point of applying for a higher level degree or higher level course, is there a connectivity? Now that depends on the college or the institution, its policy on enrollment, on acceptance of students and their program structure. Now, students have also mentioned whether at the end of the program, whether the recognition of the attainment is different among the various institutions. Well, the answer is for undergrad level, they are the same among all the universities and institutions in the accreditation scale. Yun Chi-wei? Well, if I can just respond to these, the issue we're talking about. Mr. Tam Jiu-chung, who's the governor, one of the members of the governing board, he's not here today. Perhaps you can pursue that on my behalf later on. Well, 3 to 4. The GPA having been attained with sufficient tuition paid and sending in the classwork, homework, etc., doesn't mean that the person can continue in that program, because the institution can say that the next level program had been closed and not offering it anymore, and the student will have to switch to another program. Now, this is so helpless. What programs, what subjects are not to be continued? Well, the Hong Kong ACT Higher Diploma Psychology Studies, it's been cut this year. Year 1 had been cut. In fact, those who were thinking of diploma connecting to high diploma had to change course or change schools. Chiu Wai-chung? Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another example concerning level 3 to connecting to level 4. Now, at diploma attainment, it is 3.9 attainment, social studies department, and he was thinking of connecting to public administration program, which is level 4. Now, 3.9 GPA cannot connect up to the next level. Why? Because the Hong Kong U diploma, that is level 3 course, do not reach the requirements of certain institutions. That is to say, there is a differential divergence in terms of the standards of these level 3 programs. Now, the students further are not just asking for the right to know. We have our handphones, we have the internet, we have platforms to look for information. What we are asking the government is to do is for disclosure of the institutions, of their finances, their enrollment fees, what they use with the enrollment fees, did they refund, did they make a profit? This is the kind of information the students want, not the programs or the addresses of the institutions, not such simplistic information. Mr. Low, any response? If you do not have the information on hand right now, perhaps provide those afterwards. 1. In response, concerning individual institutions, we will find out from the relevant institution concerning the discontinuation of the programs. Right, you will have to come back to me. I will follow up with you. provide a written response, please, to the student concerned? Second question. Information platform is but one of the tools. And going back to disclosure of financials that we were talking about, we totally understand the students' importance that they attach to understanding the operation of the institution through the disclosure of financials and other information. Hopefully, through discussions with the stakeholders, we are able to attain this. Li Ho-yin, please. Well, we have the administration here, and we were talking about the recognition of the accredited degrees. Now, since the City U had sold off their school, what we're looking at is that if we use the logic of the administration, then we do not have to have any developments of the departments of the funded institutions. They do not have to be held responsible. Well, are you worried that these institutions, because of seeking ranking, in particular City U, they seek international cooperation or churning out research, getting more international partners? If there are more and more of these self-funded institutions set up, then they can come. These institutions can come into Hong Kong and make lots of money, and they can even go to the mainland as well. Well, under Cap 493, it is exactly on the registration of education institutions for local and overseas students. Now, for non-local students, and in opening up the programs for them, there is to be registration under this ordinance. That's exactly the supervision that we provide. That is to allow students to know that under the law, whether this program that they are undertaking is registered. If you want this to be a locally recognized program, there will have to be another layer of accreditation, and that is academic accreditation. Now, if we're all in agreement, let us extend this for another 5 minutes.
All right. Please speak into the mic. Please switch on the mic. Concerning requirements in the law, now the Deputy Secretary said that reasonableness and proportionality were the guiding principles for regulating or overseeing the operation of self-financing tertiary institutions. In fact, in Hong Kong, there are self-financing institutions like the Open University, and there is a piece of legislation whereby the administration can use the legislation to oversee the operation of the university. Why is it that the financial report can't be made known to the public? I think concerning the code, is it only meant to be an interim arrangement, and is it that there will be legislation in the long run? Mr. Zhang Xiaoyin, please speak on the mic. Chairman, concerning UGC funded institutes of professional education. Now, their accounts can be subsumed under the university's accounts, but you can't find a breakdown in the university's accounts, and as a result, the university can produce an excellent financial statement, but you do not know the details. You don't know where the revenue comes from or where the expenditure goes. And we don't know what programs are introduced and which ones have been scrapped. So what is the Education Bureau's policy with regard to institutes of professional education under the UGC-funded institutions? Because we simply don't know how these professional institutions operate. Now, time's up. Last one. Please be brief. Yes, very brief. I think in saying that the self-financing and the publicly funded sector complement each other. In fact, you are just saying that you don't want to oversee rigorously the self-financing sector. And so I think there are about 20 to 30 self-financing tertiary institutions in Hong Kong, 28 in fact. So can you step up the oversight? All right, I'm sorry. I think I'll have to invite the Deputy Secretary to respond. Thank you, Chairman. Concerning the review or possible amendments to the post-secondary colleges ordinance. Now, as a student has pointed out, there are 20 to 30 self-financing tertiary institutions. They are of different scale. They are in different stages of development, and so and across the board approach may not be appropriate. And in fact, oversight by legislation is just one option. In fact, there are other options. We will have a review after we've tried out this option proposed in our paper. And then the self-financing arms of UGC funded universities. Now, I want to say that the UGC requires that if these universities operate self-financing branches, then they must not make use of UGC resources to operate these self-financing programs. And UGC does require UGC funded institutions to provide very clear and separate accounts. Deputy Chairman, it is said that the surplus is about 60 to 70 billion dollars. And if we're talking about $30,000 per student, then the amount is only about $2.5 billion. All right, time's up. I think time's up. If the deputations want to give further comments, they're welcome to do so in writing after the meeting. And you can, of course, leave your scripts behind for the reference of our members. Please write down your names on the scripts. So the meeting is adjourned.